Hello, I'm Durr-e Adan Haque, also known as Daya. I'm an Indonesian-Pakistani non-binary lesbian.
I'm Merryana Salem, aka Mary. I'm a Lebanese-Aboriginal bisexual woman.
We're two writers who love movies, television, and books, especially when they're gay.
And welcome to GayV Club, where we'll be analysing LGBT texts
that we like, that we don't like, and how we relate to these texts as gay people of colour.
Hello!
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
It's good to be back.
It is always good to be back on
It's
the
been
podcast.
a while.
It has. We've been busy.
Mm-hmm. And we hope everyone else has been busy too, in a good way.
And safe and happy and well and healthy. As per usual, GayV Club, we are on the socials. GayV_club. If you're not already following us there, please
on
do.
Twitter and Instagram.
We also have a Patreon now.
Mm-hmm.
You get little bonus episodes. We recently did an episode on gay documentaries. So there's lots of cool extra content you can get. Yeah, patreon.com/GayVClub.
And also you can request bonus episodes from us.
We love requests from our patrons.
Yes, thank you for supporting gay people in the arts.
Yes. All right.
Okay, let's get down to business. So, what are we going to talk about today, Salem?
Well, Huck, we're going to talk today about, dear children, one of D&I's favourite subjects of all time, Sherlock Holmes adaptations. And we are talking about that Sherlock Holmes, that bitch, the legendary detective created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
This episode is titled My Dear Watson, though, so actually, we have some range here.
You can't talk about one without the other.
We could talk about, so many different aspects of Sherlock Holmes adaptations, but today we want to focus on gender and gender bending in recent Sherlock Holmes adaptations. So, Sherlock Holmes, the legendary detective created by Arthur Conan Doyle, or ACD, as you may hear us refer to him as later, is the most portrayed literary character on screen of all time, with over 250 depictions across film and television since the invention of cinema.
Mate, he is so popular.
Not far behind that number is Holmes's companion, Dr. John Watson. In 2009, Warner Brothers released an action/mystery blockbuster starring Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law as Holmes and Watson, directed by Guy Ritchie, and they made a ton of money. This film and its sequel have made over $1 billion.
That's amazing.
In 2010, the BBC released a modern adaptation of Sherlock Holmes, written by the devil himself and his gay friend.
The straightest gay friend.
Where the only thing modern about it is that characters text each other. Loath are we to admit it, but this adaptation is the reason that most people are into Sherlock Holmes today. It's also the reason that Mary and I met, so I guess it was worth it, but it's whatever.
I'm sorry, babe. I know it's hard. This terrible thing brought you me, but you're gonna have to
yeah.
You're just gonna have to acknowledge that, you know.
In 2012, piggybacking off this popularity of Sherlock Holmes content, CBS released their own modern adaptation of Sherlock Holmes created by Robert Doherty called Elementary. This time it was set in New York with Johnny Lee Miller as Holmes and Lucy Liu as Dr. Watson.
Woo!
So with the exception of this really obscure 1986 Russian film called My Tenderly Loved Detective, which I really want to watch but can't find, in which the duo are both women, Lucy Liu as Joan Watson is the first gender-bent Watson, and she's also the first Watson played by a person of colour as a person of colour. And I make this distinction because Ben Kingsley played Watson in Without a Clue, but as we all know, Ben Kingsley pretends to be a white person until it's convenient for him. Do you want to talk about the importance of Dr. Watson, Salem?
I do! I literally have a whole series on YouTube that I made called Elementary vs. Sherlock, where I go in depth comparing these two adaptations. They're a couple of years old now, but I'm still pretty proud of them. So my YouTube channel is aka Just Mary. You can go check it out. Because I'm actually very proud of those videos, and I've often thought about returning to them and making more.
They're very extensive.
Yeah, thank you. I still have the scripts for the ones that I haven't made. I digress again. So the importance of Dr. Watson. Dr. Watson is very, very important in Sherlock Holmes canon or mythology. I mean, the job of Watson primarily is to, like, be the in for the audience. I mean, this is kind of obvious when you consider, like, in the original stories, he's the dude that we literally read from the perspective from. The stories you read of Sherlock Holmes are written by Dr. Watson, so he is the witness, he is our in, so he's pretty important. Watson primarily functions as that, but I personally also believe that Watson sort of functions as someone who lends legitimacy to Holmes's work. Holmes is a consulting detective, which, as he often says in every version that you've ever seen, is a job that he made up. It's not real. It's not real anywhere. It's never really been a position that is legitimate. And I personally feel that Dr. Watson is also there to lend some credibility as well as humanity to what Holmes does. Not just because Watson is a doctor. In the books, this does come up a lot, like it's because he's a military man as well. And obviously, the friendship is there to make you sort of care about Holmes, because otherwise you wouldn't really have anyone there to be like, what are you thinking about, buddy? And I think any decent version of John Watson or Dr. Watson does those things, but the better versions of Dr. Watson go beyond that, which we will talk about.
Yeah, and I think Joan Watson in Elementary goes the furthest, dare I say.
You dared.
So, Elementary is so named after the very famous quote from Sherlock Holmes canon, where Sherlock Holmes says, "It's elementary, my dear Watson." And my dear Watson is very much the energy of the show for at least the first 3-4 seasons, because
yes,
this show is just as much about Watson as it is about Holmes.
Yes.
So we're gonna talk about that.
They are partners.
At the beginning of this series, it doesn't appear so much like this though. For the first few episodes, Joan is our entry point into the life of a very unique version of Holmes that we've not really seen previously. Sherlock Holmes is canonically a drug addict, and throughout canon and a few preceding adaptations, this characteristic of Holmes is presented in a very casual, unconcerned, occasionally problematic way.
This trait of Holmes even makes it into House, which was like the vaguest adaptation of Holmes that's ever been made. It's definitely a thing that you see more in modern adaptations, I think.
Yeah, because, you know, back in the day, they didn't care about this thing. Like, I love that joke in the Holmes and Watson movie, where Watson is just like, would you like me to prescribe you some cocaine? That's how Victorian doctors were like that.
Literally in the story, I'm pretty sure Watson only gets concerned because he's not really concerned that he's like doing the opium. It's more like, well, you've done a lot there, buddy. More than I would prescribe to my patients. Are you doing all right?
Sorry, this is a horrible thing to laugh at. I think, like, out of not just Sherlock Holmes adaptations, but just out of all of television, I think Elementary is probably the most nuanced portrayal of addiction that I've seen on screen.
Yes.
So Joan Watson is an ex-surgeon who falls into Sherlock's orbit when she is hired by his father to act as his sober companion, to help him transition back to normal life after a while in rehab. The first half of season 1 follows Sherlock's attempts to suppress his struggles with sobriety by solving murders, and also Joan's struggles trying to get this dude to engage with the AA/NA program. So Joan, like every other Watson, tags along with Sherlock to crime scenes, and she offers her medical expertise. And unlike every other Watson, I think she's actually extremely helpful in this aspect. I think
yes.
I think
She's
in canon
just...
and in all adaptations, he gradually gets more and more useless. And is just like
Joan actually provides insight. Yeah, Joan actually provides
like an
insight like from the beginning.
Like, I love her brain.
Her mind.
Her mind. Yeah, so slowly we see her becoming intrigued by Holmes's career as a consulting detective. We see her developing investigative instincts and like deductive skills similar to his. And by the time their period of sober companionship ends, she becomes his apprentice. Bro, we love friendship.
Bro. I love them.
So yeah, Joan becomes Sherlock's apprentice, and over the remaining season, we see Joan learning. We see her doubting herself, we see her discovering herself, we see her growing and sharpening her skills. We see her earning the same respect for her skills that Sherlock gets, and we also see her earning admiration that he doesn't get because she's not a complete headcase like him.
Yeah.
Durr-e and co. show us that what makes Sherlock Holmes unique and amazing doesn't just belong to Sherlock or even a man like Sherlock. Watson is an Asian American woman whose perspective as an Asian American woman frequently enables her to develop insights and solve problems that Holmes cannot conceive with his limited worldview.
Yes. It is worth acknowledging that her heritage is acknowledged in also a very nuanced way. You learn why she has the last name Watson and why she does what she does. I think I read a lot of people who hadn't watched Elementary trying to be like, oh, but they just supplant Lucy Liu as Dr. Watson and they don't acknowledge that, you know, Lucy's Chinese and it's like, actually, no, they do.
They do. That's very much part of her character. There are so many aspects of her character that are just, like, relatable to Asians living in the West, especially. Like that scene, she hears Holmes speaking Cantonese on the phone, and then she's like, you speak that? And he's like, not as well as I'd like, do you? And she's like, not as well as my mother would like. Which is really just the first-gen immigrant mood.
That is also acknowledged and pretty seamlessly interwoven with the Dr. Watson archetype.
So she learns from him, and in turn he learns from her. He even acknowledges explicitly, like, I am better with you, which is, chef's kiss. Watson's skills as a consulting detective develop to a point where she is a true equal to Holmes, and they solve literally hundreds of cases through teamwork and the power of friendship. And she even completely surpasses him in several instances. The coolest of which is at the end of season 1 when Moriarty, who is Holmes's evil nemesis, who he's canonically never been able to truly defeat, is instead defeated by Watson. That was like so good. I will say, like, Elementary really fell off when they stopped gender-bending characters, I've got to say.
Also when they upped the propaganda.
Yeah.
This is a side note, but, like, during this time when Elementary was on TV, like, following Lucy Liu and, like, Johnny Lee Miller on Instagram was just, like, the best because they were constantly, like, just taking photos of each other. I know! And they would, I love it. Like, Johnny Lee Miller's Instagram, like, for me was such a huge mood because it was
just,
either him,
all
like,
Lucy Liu.
All Lucy Liu, either Lucy Liu or his cats.
It was a good time for Lucy Liu fans
this
everywhere.
This is me. And fans of cats. It was just like such a wholesome time in television. Where are we up to?
Platonic soulmates.
But
yeah,
Platonic
they were just
soulmates!
like so wholesome.
Yes, they were just best friends, like literally best friends. I don't know what Joan Locke shippers. Like, I don't know what you're smoking. Like, I just don't understand why, like, do you not respect friendships? Like, do you have no respect for friendships? Like, it is truly a testament to something in this heteronormative world, the version of Holmes and Watson that succeeds in having the least amount of romantic tension in a good way is the one where Holmes and Watson are like a man and a woman. I think about that all the time. Like, I think about how, like, most modern adaptations with Holmes and Watson, like, have some kind of, like, queerbaity, like, romantic tension.
God, I remember so much when Elementary was announced, the haters in the BBC Sherlock fandom were like, oh my god, I can't believe they made Watson a woman so that, you know, John Locke could be canon.
Joke's on you, bitch!
But also, like, it is worth mentioning, just with Elementary, just, like, for your regular, you know, your casual TV watchers, like, people really wanted them to be together anyway. Like, despite the fact that I don't think the show actually, you know, suggests that there could ever be anything romantic between them, like, people just wanted it to happen anyway. And, like, whenever a new season came out and, you know, Lucy Liu and Johnny Lee Miller would be, like, doing the rounds, like, on, you know, promoting it and stuff, and, you know, interviewers would just be like, is this the season Sherlock and Joan finally get together?
It's like,
and, you know,
no.
they'd just be like, watch to find out. So I just think it's really iconic of Elementary to spend 7 years straight baiting.
Yeah.
And never following through on that. Legends.
No, they're just, thank you for not doing that. I really do think it's so ironic. Of all the places where I'd expect Holmes and Watson to finally become canon as a romantic couple, as so many people have wanted them to be, on surface level, this is where I'd expect it to happen, but it's actually, like, the least likely place where it was ever going to happen. You know? Like, I was actually prepared, even with how homophobic Mark Gaddis is. I was actually more prepared for
You what?
I was more prepared for John Locke to become canon than I ever would be for Joan Locke.
Oh my
god.
god.
Like, because I just was like, Johnny Lee Miller and Lucy Liu would never allow that to happen. So I know that it won't happen. But like,
yeah. But also shout out to Elementary for making Sheriardi canon.
Oh, you love that.
But in a hetero way.
Yeah, I know, but you still love it. It's still there.
I still love it. It's good. It's good shit. Doesn't matter the gender. It's good.
Yeah, that's right.
But also, I do think it's cowardly that it didn't make either of Holmes or Watson gay. Like, I just gotta say.
But yeah.
Like, if you wanted to really adapt Watson to modern day women on 5 continents, we all just wanted to see gay Lucy Liu. But also, Johnny Lee Miller's Holmes was like, why weren't you bi?
Stop it!
You know? There's so many scenes where he's just like, tragically, I'm straight.
Like, tragically,
if it's
straight.
so tragic, bro, you don't have to be.
The scene where Sherlock is talking to Fiona.
She's just like, I've never had a boyfriend before. And he's just
like,
me
neither
neither
have I, but perhaps I've
He's like, sadly, me neither.
Yeah, he's like, maybe I've never met the right man. And I'm like, hello? Hello?
Yes, you have. His name is Marcus Bell. But yeah, wasted opportunity. Absolute
And like, I know Johnny Lee Miller can
Doherty
do
and
it.
Co.
You know, I know he can do it.
I know.
Yeah, so
I know.
So, you know, I don't blame anyone because like Elementary like gave us so much good food. So I'm not like trying to be ungrateful. But I'm just like, I want to put it out there.
But I am a little bit ungrateful.
But yeah, by aiming to adapt the characters rather than the stories, Mr. Robert Doherty had the room to do things differently because as characters, rather than characters who must be part of a specific story being adapted, Elementary wasn't bound by gender, race, or even nationality, as none of these things inform the specific set of character traits that any given version of Dr. Watson has to start with. That's all Watson needs to be Watson. Nothing in that job description says that Watson has to be a man, has to be white, has to be British. Joan is more because Doherty understood that Watson in the stories is a starting point, not an end point. And yes, that is a direct dig at BBC Sherlock.
But also, like, it's just a fuck you to the canon. British canon. Like, do you remember how mad people were when Lucy Liu was cast? Like, how outraged the white bitches were? Do you remember when Stephen Moffat was asked about Elementary and he was like, you know, these people are, you know, not as famous as Benedict Cumberbatch. And when freaking Martin Freeman was asked about Lucy Liu playing the same character as him, he, like, actually said that she looks like a dog, as if that has anything to do with playing Watson, as if he doesn't look like
I know. Like, one of the things...
like, as if he doesn't look like roadkill.
I still think about that and I get really angry. And I hated how, like, BBC Sherlock fans, like, I don't associate with them. I do, but I don't. But also unrelated, this is my crack ship. My crack Adlock ship is Elementary Sherlock and BBC Sherlock Irene. Because I just think they'd get along really well. Like, I just think they'd actually be, like, besties.
Yeah. My crack ship is BBC Sherlock Irene and Jamie Moriarty.
Oh, I know that's your... I know!
As we all know. My other crack ship is Jude Law's Watson and Johnny Lee Miller's Holmes.
The vibes are immaculate.
Because,
I can see that.
Also, just gonna put this out there that it would be cool to see Lucy Liu's Watson with Yuka Takeuchi's Holmes.
Yes!
Let's move on to talk about a little show that was released in 2018 by HBO Asia called Miss Sherlock, which was an adaptation of Sherlock Holmes set in Japan, where Sherlock Holmes was a woman played by Yuka Takeuchi, and Watson is Watto played by Shiori Kanji.
Sherlock and Watto are everything they need to be to tick the Holmes and Watson box, and more. Holmes is a consulting detective with amazing skills of deduction and psychological profiling who needs a roommate, and Watto is a volunteer doctor who misses work and also needs a roommate.
Yeah. So here, they're of course Japanese women, so the character specifics are adapted to suit that context. Unlike canon, and also unlike other adaptations including Elementary, Miss Sherlock is not set in the Western world. They're in Asia, they're in Japan, and it's a vastly different culture that we're used to seeing these characters in. Sherlock Holmes is always presented as someone who thinks and behaves very differently to the accepted cultural norms of the society that he lives in. And because Miss Sherlock is set in a completely different society, this Sherlock's eccentricities have been adapted / interpreted into behaviors that we've actually never seen from a Sherlock before. But they still remain true to the character, I think. It's just like a whole new set of rules to break. And I think it's even more pronounced because she is a woman. And the societal expectations placed on women's behavior in most cases are way more restrictive than those placed on men. So, like, an example of this is a time when Sherlock barges into the home of a suspect, and Watho, she's, like, following behind, and she's, like, exasperated and, like, embarrassed. She's just like, this is someone's house. You need to take off your shoes. Like, God, I can't take you anywhere. And, like... or when she just, like, straight up reaches and, like, covers a man's mouth with her hand to stop him from talking. Like, I love her. I love her. So I think, like Elementary, the gender bending in Miss Sherlock proves that the essential skills and eccentricities of Sherlock Holmes aren't reserved for just men. And Takeuchi's Holmes manages to be feminine in a way that is so Holmesian. Like, she uses her extensive chemistry knowledge not only to solve crimes, but also to make her own toners and perfumes for herself and her friends. She bugs Watto about her fashion and then gives her a blood-stained Hermes coat, which she once used to wrap a dismembered body. Like, this is just such good content, guys. She also has, like, the most immaculate robes. Screen adaptations of Sherlock Holmes are known for their iconic robes,
her
and
wardrobe,
I think
it's amazing.
follows that tradition. It's amazing.
Oh, yes.
And gay. She's just such a lesbian. Like, when you watch the show, like, how are you supposed to think she is straight? I don't think she and Watho should be together. They just don't have that vibe. But yeah, she's definitely a lesbian, and her chemistry with Rinko Kikuchi when she shows up to be in one episode is, like, off the charts.
Another level.
So yeah, Miss Sherlock, like Elementary, it proves that there's actually almost nothing distinctive about Sherlock Holmes that is traditionally masculine. I've also read some pretty convincing essays that interpret Holmes as a trans man, for instance, and like a few other things. Like, you can have so much fun with this character because there's so much that's strange about them. That's, not, that's as if this person is straight, as if this person is
They're just too cool. They're just too cool. Sadly, we still live in a world where it is considered bold to say that these character traits are not typically masculine. So it is still bold and rare for gender-bent Sherlock Holmes adaptations to exist. There are only three. And one of them is an obscure Russian one that we can't even find.
I mean, technically... Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century.
No. Watson's a robot.
Watson is a robot.
He's a big, beefy robot. We love a king. I used to watch that show all the time when I was little. And it was so fun. But yeah, there's only three. Like, there are over 250 depictions of Sherlock Holmes. You know what disheartens me especially?
There's, like, only three gender bendings.
Sherlock Holmes is out of copyright. Like, you can do whatever you want. Whatever you want. Like, there is literally no limits to what you can do, like, with this character. I mean, the ACD estate might get mad at you, but, like, who cares what they think?
They have to get jobs in, like, 7 years.
Actual jobs.
They have to get actual jobs.
But who cares? Like, you can actually do whatever you want with this character. The fact that we still, to this day, have only had 3 gender-bent Holmes, like, that's... do better. Everyone do better. Including me. Everyone do better. But I feel like this cowardice... it directly feeds into the other cowardly phenomena, unwillingness to say that any aspect of Sherlock Holmes is gay, like, explicitly, despite a very rich, shall we say, subculture. I would argue that it's not a subculture. Like, I feel like most people, it's, like, very accepted.
It's just, like, accepted. I don't know anyone that, like, doesn't think at least a version of Holmes isn't
different Holmes have different vibes. Like, whenever I still occasionally get asked on Tumblr, like, do I think Sherlock Holmes is gay? And my answer is, like, it depends on what version you're talking about.
It's a spectrum. So on the super straight spectrum is Benedict Cumberbatch. On the other end is Jeremy Brett.
I know you, Robert Downey Jr. is down the other end of that spectrum too.
Yeah, but like Jeremy Brett
true.
is like actually bi,
okay.
so we gotta give him, we gotta respect the king.
I think it's also worth mentioning, like, Arthur Conan Doyle didn't give a shit if Sherlock was gay, but he was also like, I don't know, I feel like likely a homophobe, like at least by omission, I don't know. People love to claim this one quote where he says, "I don't think my friend Oscar Wilde should be killed for being gay, just reformed, rehabilitated." Like, it really isn't your strongest point. Like, I am aware that at that time it was very dangerous for men to be seen as sympathizing with gay men, but I still don't think it's a highlight that Conan Doyle said
worth
this.
mentioning.
Yeah, but Sherlock Holmes...
that supports the TJLC.
Yeah. I love the TJLC. Oh, do you know
I hope whoever's listening to this is getting like blasts from the past.
But yeah, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson have been like interpreted as gay in many adaptations subtexts for a long time. Like, i.e. The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. There's a lot of subtext in Grenade.
He's explicitly gay in Private Life.
It is, actually. But, you know, there's subtext in lots of versions, like the Grenada Holmes, the Guy Ritchie Holmes films, like... Robert Downey Jr. has said a lot that he plays Holmes as gay in those movies, and I think that's very clear in the performance, personally. But to this day, the only explicitly gay Holmes in existence that isn't queerbaiting, I need to emphasize this, the only gay Holmes that is actually real and actually gay and not queerbaiting doesn't count, kids, is Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. And that was made, like, a long time ago. Like, a long time.
Yeah, it's from the 70s.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Grenada Holmes is just like Jeremy Brett inserting his own subtext because he was a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's still subtext.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
it's still subtext, but he did that for us.
He did that for us, because he's great. I have a lot of beliefs, like tenets, about Sherlock Holmes. And if anyone knows me... My biggest thing with Sherlock Holmes is the love of my life, Miss Irene Adler. Love her. But I think, like, how gender and sexuality are being dealt with in any given Holmes adaptation can usually be gauged from Irene Adler. Not to, like, push our Patreon in the middle of the episode, because we don't usually do that, but I do have, like, a whole bonus episode where I talk about Irene Adler. So you can go and listen to that if you're feeling like it. Or you can go watch my YouTube video. I talk about this character a lot.
Endless promos.
I know. I think how gender and sexuality is being dealt with in a Holmes adaptation, if Irene Adler's around, you can usually gauge it from her, like, and how her character as an individual is portrayed, also how her connection to Holmes is portrayed. Mostly because Irene Adler is literally the only woman in Holmes canon with a significant role that impacts Holmes as a character. I mean, Mrs. Hudson is also around, but the funny thing about Mrs. Hudson is that she was so inconsistent, such an inconsistent presence in the stories that her name isn't even Mrs. Hudson in every single story. It's like a different name. When people cite, like, Mrs. Hudson as, like, this female presence, I'm like, her name isn't even the same name in all of the stories, dude. That's how much Arthur Conan Doyle cared. I love Arthur Conan Doyle's hatred of Sherlock Holmes. It's one of my favourite things. I feel like I was put on this earth to, like, infuriate him sometimes. But yeah, I, president of the Irene Adler fan club, believe that versions of Holmes that ignore Irene are usually, like, misogynists or cowards or homophobes or a combination. I do believe Irene Adler has an important role to play. That's all I will say about that.
Well, I actually have something to counter that.
Okay, well then go for it.
I prepared this, like, separate from the Google Doc so you wouldn't murder me.
Okay. I'll still murder you, this is
possibly some hard pills to swallow, but, like, please let me finish what I'm about to say. So I don't think that you can actually apply the Irene Adler rule to Elementary or Miss Sherlock. Which, the reason... Okay, so ACD, a rich white Englishman, writing a woman character like Irene Adler was pretty woke for the year 1891, but I think in a truly modern day adaptation, I don't think that character actually translates. I think the best thing about Irene Adler, like the reason that that character was so important was that she was a woman who makes Holmes reevaluate his personal prejudices against women. And so like while her role is like unique for her gender, her role is still very much gendered. Like womanhood is intrinsic to the character. She is the woman because there are no other, as you said, there are no other women characters in Sherlock Holmes canon that have the significant agency that ACD gave to Irene. So I think in a modern day adaptation like BBC Sherlock, the Irene Adler rule could have applied because at the point that she's introduced, she is that woman. She is that bitch.
She's that bitch.
Because
Laura
other
Pulver,
than
I
here,
love you. Sorry.
yes, I know. We are everything to Laura Pulver. But like, you know, at the point that she's introduced in the story, there's only Mrs. Hudson and Molly Hooper, the doormat. But of course, you know, Moffat being Moffat, like he couldn't get that right.
Nope.
So he doesn't pass the Irene Adler rule. But I think in a modern adaptation where characters have modern sensibilities and also importantly modern visibility, the role Irene Adler plays isn't actually necessary for Irene Adler specifically to carry out. We've had this conversation before where you've said it doesn't necessarily have to be sexism that is the prejudice that Holmes must overcome. But in Elementary, and I don't mean to make Elementary sound like this utopia of like progressiveness, because it isn't. But in Elementary, like pretty much everything that is not naturally the concern of a white Englishman like Sherlock is actually covered, like over the course of the series by various women. You know, mainly by Watson, but also Kitty, by Fiona, and there's also like several like episodic women characters who make that impact. It's not necessarily in a way that's like, oh, we are teaching Sherlock Holmes a lesson today, like sit down. But it's often just like shining a light on various issues for the audience to consider. There's issues of like misogyny, racism, mental health, sexual assault, ableism, privacy, classism. Like they actually managed to do quite a bit, I think. So I know in relation to Elementary, you are like a bit bitter because you didn't get to see your favorite character in her truest form.
No, but
I'm slightly bitter
it's
too.
a bitterness that's like
But
balanced
also-
out because I still like why that is. I just like, you know, I just love Irene.
But also, I don't think she could have existed that way in the truest form. Also, for the record, I do think that with Jamie Moriarty, they were angling for something like with corruption. All the pieces are there. But, you know, unfortunately, Natalie Dormer was like, nah, I'm too busy doing like croc commercials.
Natalie Dormer.
So the writers were forced to do what they could with the little Irene that they had. I wish they just recast her. I wish they had just recast her.
She couldn't even record a freaking voice recording for like a voicemail or something.
She couldn't even like send a photo of herself to like be turned into a portrait for the last episode.
I hate how fake like Natalie Dormer was when she'd be like, I really would love to work on Elementary again. I would really love to work with Robert Doherty again. Like, I hope I get that opportunity. Like, bitch, really?
They asked so many times.
Like, no, you're TBZ, like having picnics at Hanging Rock.
It's like such a tragedy. Like she was like, oh, every time they would like tease us with her, but like she doesn't show. She never shows.
No. She never, ever shows.
Natalie Dormer never shows.
Nope.
Say it with me, Watson.
Oh. Okay, sorry, continue with
Yeah. No, that's it. That's all I had to say.
I actually, believe it or not, I do agree with you.
Thank you.
I do agree with you.
I'm very proud of myself. I made this I typed up this very compelling argument at midnight last night. So
I love that argument and I do agree with it.
I do like that, you know, by gender bending Moriarty themselves is also like another fuck you to Western canon because Moriarty is now a woman.
Yep.
Like, Harry, did you know that women have minds?
Okay, then can I just say, because I actually have watched Little Women
Robert
now.
Doherty and co certainly do. Sorry, what?
I actually watched Little Women, like, recently. Because my mum was watching it, and when I saw that scene, I couldn't, like, not laugh because of how many times we've ripped it off. So when she was like, women have minds, I was like, oh no.
Oh shit, women have minds.
But also, like, in context,
you know
that
what?
scene is quite sad. But I couldn't, like,
okay.
I couldn't be sad like Miss Gerwig wanted me to be, because all I could think about was our voices being like, women have minds.
But yeah, Doherty and Co., Lucy Liu, Yuka Takeuchi, Natalie Dormer for a little bit. They all knew that
Also,
women had minds.
I don't think we've mentioned it here, but in Elementary, Mrs. Hudson is a trans woman.
Yes, Candace Cain.
Yes.
I wish she was in it more. She was just like too busy.
She's
as well.
only really got like the one big episode, I think, where she's...
And then she has cameos.
And then she has cameos occasionally, but she's great. But yeah, I don't, if we're discussing like differences in gender and the way we portray these characters, that's certainly one that slips under people's radar. Probably because she's not in it that much, but it's still worth mentioning.
Let's just take a moment to talk about the recent Annala Holmes adaptation that just came out, because this is technically sort of gender bent.
I was very excited for this when this was announced because I read the Enola Holmes books when I was younger. The premise of Enola Holmes is that Sherlock has a little sister who was born quite a while after he was born. There's like a pretty big age gap between them, but she is a teen. She's in her mid-teens, and she is a little bit of an amateur detective in her own right, and she has her own mysteries to solve.
Whenever I watch a kids movie and I sit down to watch a kids movie, I adjust my expectations and I try to think of it like, how would I have enjoyed this when I was the age of the target audience?
Yep.
Like, how helpful would this have been to me? I may have enjoyed it when I was like 7 or 8 if I was watching this.
Yes, because it's pretty and there's loud noises.
By the time I hit like 13, 14, I would have looked back on it and been like, this is pretty dumb.
I do think Henry Cavill was really fun Sherlock Holmes.
I think he was just some dude.
I think he was just some dude, though, because to Enola, he's just some dude. So, like, of course he's gonna be just some dude. I think Henry Cavill had a fun time. I love my big beefy nerd man. He was fun. And I do like the sibling energy that was there.
Yeah.
It reminded me a lot of me and my older sister, who I have quite a big age gap between. Yeah, I really liked that.
Yeah.
It was very sweet. But this is my real big point that comes back to the theme of this episode, which is gender and gender-bent Sherlock Holmes. The question I want to ask is, why can't we just have a female Sherlock Holmes? The answer is misogyny. I feel like this trope of a character being essentially a woman version of a man character, but can't just be a woman version of that character, i.e. they have to be an apprentice, or a relative, or even a flippin' clone. Yes, that's a direct reference to the Doctor's daughter. It's like this misogynistic desire to not have the masculinity of the main character, so the original character, tainted. It's like, we don't want to taint this character by having a woman play them, so we'll just come up with a reason for a woman to be like this character. It also means that the woman character, and this is the key thing, it also means that any woman character, woman version, is still indebted to and therefore beneath their male counterpart in some way, and must defer to them. This was something that specifically bothered me about the Ocean's 8 film. Literally, the premise of Batgirl in the DC comics is exactly this. You couldn't possibly just have Bruce Wayne be a girl and come up and have all this thing. No, Batgirl has to be a completely separate character for some reason. You could even argue that the most recent sequel to Bill and Ted is this. Billy and Thea in Bill and Ted are literally just Bill and Ted gender swapped.
Yeah, I would have liked them to have actual personalities.
Yep.
Other than just them doing imitations of Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves. I had fun, but also
And of course, the thing that I feel arguably the most strongly about this is in Star Trek Discovery. I love Star Trek Discovery, but one thing that bothers me is that Michael Burnham, who's the main character of Star Trek Discovery, it's revealed in about episode 3 that she is Spock's adopted sister, because of course you couldn't simply have a Vulcan human character that's their own person. No, they have to be, she has to be connected to Spock. Point I'm making is this trope I see time and time and again, and I feel like it just stems from this idea that a woman's validity in a world or a story, especially an authoritative woman or a woman who is skilled, must be because she's connected to a man. While the self-insert Mary Sue sibling hoe has a long and respected tradition in fiction, because for a long time that's how women were allowed to be in stories, and I'm the first hoe in this house to admit that I love a good family ties, fanfic, where some cool babe is the reason I'm here in this story being an iconic bitch is because, Merlin was my father or something, I don't know. But, it's It's high time we ask for better. Like, they should just be, like, a female. Like, if you want to make a version of Sherlock Holmes that's a kid and a girl, do it. Just do it. Like, you don't need to, like, come up.
And her name can be Sherlock.
And her name
Who
can be
cares?
Sherlock, you know?
We mentioned earlier that there's only there's only 2 gender-bent Sherlock Holmes characters, but actually there are like a few other adaptations where her name is like Shirley Holmes and she's like the niece of Sherlock Holmes, or like, again, like a secret sister or something like that. Like, she's never allowed to be just Sherlock. She's always made, oh, this is the female version, so she's, different.
Literally, I've read so many pastiches, like Sherlock Holmes novels that are about a woman who is secretly related to Sherlock and has all his skills. The most recent one I read was called The Daughter. Literally, the title is called The Daughter of Sherlock Holmes. And she literally becomes best friends with the grandson of Dr. Watson and they solve crimes. And I'm like, why couldn't you just write like Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson as women? You didn't need to do all those backflips. Also, like, the idea that Irene Adler would have a child with Sherlock Holmes, I literally hate it. Do not ever pitch it to me. I will, like, shoot you down every single freaking time. Like, nah. But yeah, on fair balance, though, I do think, like, it's a fun question to ask. What if Sherlock has a sister? Enola Holmes is ideally how I'd like that question to be answered, whereas BBC Sherlock is more like the version, like the answer of that question where I'm like, wow, I never thought of it that way, and I never will again.
Hey, remember how the glass wasn't there?
Shut up. I don't ever want it. No. But yeah, I do think there is a place, for lack of a better word, like sibling AUs. I just wish that, like, it wasn't the only acceptable way to get women versions of these characters. You know?
Like, just do it. No one cares.
I do just believe that we should be able to have, I say women versions, but I just seem like,
just gender-bent versions of classic characters. Like, we haven't mentioned this yet in the episode, but it's important to note here that gender bending or gender flipping, it's a technique or trope that's only really utilized in comic books, comic book adaptations, or fan fiction. But Elementary and Miss Sherlock are both really good examples of how you can use gender bending and race bending to challenge the Western canon, to take these staples of literature and actually make something amazing out of that. Like, they prove that you can create more interesting and more relevant stories when you tell them from the perspective of someone other than a straight cis white man. Like, they show that you can make a story more relevant to you and more meaningful to you and other people like you who were never represented in the original texts. I don't think we should stop at Sherlock Holmes. I think we should destroy the entire Western canon, starting with Dracula, because I just really want Dracula.
Do you know what I want? Dorian Gray.
Remember how that St. Vincent movie never happened?
Yeah, don't remind me. I was thinking about that.
St. Vincent was gonna be in a movie that was a gender swap Dorian Gray.
It just never happened.
I don't know. It's just in turnaround.
They announced it and then it was never spoken of ever again. The PSA, the main moral of this story is that I love Sherlock Holmes, and until I get to, like, bring my own version of Sherlock Holmes into being, I don't believe that any version will be good enough for me. And it's quite possible that even my own version will not be good enough for me.
It's okay, my version will.
Your version will be good enough for me? That's a big call.
It will be.
I like the confidence. Yeah. I like it.
I love that we're both working on, like, versions of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
I'm not really working on mine. Mine is just, like, something that I made up 2 years ago. They were like, this would be cool, and then I never did anything with it, but,
One day.
Someday.
To end on a lighter note, I was actually teaching. I got to teach Sherlock Holmes to some of my students, because she's my friend, the teacher that I was filling in for. She gave me the lesson where they had to come up with their own version of Sherlock Holmes. And something that I found slightly disheartening was the amount of times that the girls in the class would put their hand up and they would be like, Miss, is it okay if my version of Sherlock is a woman? And I'd go, yeah, why wouldn't it be? And I just think, I thought to myself in that time, like, we have, like, so ingrained the idea that, like, Sherlock Holmes has to be a man, that I actually, like, when I've sat, like, with this class...
That you just can't go against the canon, that it's, like, this sacred text that, is unquestionable.
Yeah, like, they actually...
And unimprovable.
Yeah, they actually put their hand up to ask me, like, can I do that? Like, is it okay? Even though I told them at the start of the lesson, like, go crazy, do whatever you want, put it in whatever setting you want. Like, it could be modern, you could actually go back further, you could have like Sherlock Holmes in the Triassic period, I don't care, like just come up with something. Sherlock Holmes looking at some bones, like, what dinosaur ate here? I don't know, come up with whatever you want. But it was like kind of disheartening. They were willing to put Sherlock Holmes in like all these different time periods, like they were fine with that, but when it came to like, oh, can I make my Sherlock Holmes a girl? If you're sizing down this story to be set in a 7-Eleven, I'm pretty sure you can make Sherlock Holmes a girl. So yeah, I don't know, it's kind of sad, but I also like loved, once I emphasized to the class, you can do whatever you want. It was also very fun to hear what they came up with. I would share what they came up with, but they are very specific versions of Sherlock Holmes that are specific to where I live. So if I tell you what kind of Sherlock Holmes they were, you won't find them funny. So, yeah, we should just have the freedom to go crazy. Go crazy.
Yeah.
Everyone go home and just for like a meditative exercise, come up with your own version of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, that's your homework, dear children.
Go home and
send them in to us, actually. That would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be really fun. Like, if you have something like you've always wanted to see, like, and it doesn't have to specifically be Sherlock Holmes, it could be like another character, or it could be like the whole vibe of like Sherlock Holmes. Like, maybe you wanted to do something like Elementary, where Sherlock Holmes moves to your country and has to friggin' do what he does there. Actually, that'd be fun. Like, if anyone has like those, that'd be really cool. Like, send them in. My
Sherlock Holmes is non-binary and it's like dark academia.
Yeah.
Go crazy.
My Sherlock Holmes is Aboriginal and she's a woman.
And a lesbian.
Yeah. She gets into being a consultant detective because the police hate blackfellas and don't help us. So that's why she is a consulting. She's not consulting detective, she just is more like a private eye. So yeah, go crazy. Sherlock Holmes can be whatever you want. Alright, don't forget to follow us on the socials at GayV_Club on Twitter and Instagram. Check out our Patreon for bonus episodes at patreon.com/GayVClub. Leave us a tip. Leave us a suggestion. We love our suggestions. Please suggest us things to do. Because we have like a couple of not empty slots, but like things we haven't decided on that we're going to do in this volume. So if there's something that you really want us to do, we have got the space.
For our next episode, we're going to be looking at Jennifer's Body because it's going to be Halloween by the time we release it. Amazing film. Greatest film of all time.
It is.
And then we're going to do a comparison of Fleabag by Phoebe Waller-Bridge and The Bisexual by Desiree Akhavan.
So if you haven't seen any of those things, I mean, I feel like if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have, but in case you haven't, this is your time.
Yeah, okay.
All right, bye guys. Thank you.
Bye guys.